Пресинг ТВ, интервју со амбасадорот Јан Петерсен, норвешки дипломат од кариера со богато искуство, доаѓал порано и во Македонија, а сега е шеф на наблюдувачката мисија на ОПСЕ ОДИР за предстојниот референдум на 30 септември. Ambassador Petersen, welcome to Macedonia.
Thank you very much.
I hope you already have to say something about the referendum. What is your first impression and messages toward this very important political process in our country?
That we have already been working for more than 3 weeks. We have a team in Skopje and we have long-term observers throughout the country, and they report back to us everything they see. So I think we can say that we are well underway forming an assessment of how this campaign is going. We are, however, not going to give any conclusions or any assessments before after the referendum day, for the simple reason that we are neutral observers. We are not going to say anything which is going to impact on the referendum campaign itself. We are just impartial, sitting back and observing.
Okay, you came here because our government sent request, and this is a kind of dialogue for better democracy and so on. But of course, you're an experienced diplomat. And my question is, what was on your specific focus of interest or analyzing before this referendum?
Actually, it is the whole process as such. It is to see to it that this campaign and this referendum process is according to the obligations which this country, like any other OC country, has entered into. And we think it is important that we observe. We do that in many OC countries. We have done more than 350 elections and some referenda. And the point is to see to it that the elections or the campaigns are according to the standards, and also to come up with improvements for the next time there will be an election or a referendum.
Usually we are asking the question, does Macedonia has the legal framework which can guarantee free and fair democratic process of electing or choosing like or voting like here in a referendum?
To consider the legal framework is also one of our tasks, and we are doing that while we are observing the other elements like the campaign, administration, finance, media, and we will include our assessment of the legal framework in our assessment which comes the day after the referendum. But we are not going to give any what we call running commentaries during the election campaign on any of these matters. If you recall, back in 2016 there was an election campaign in the spring, because then elections were called early, but it turned out that they were suspended. And the question was, is this country ready for elections or not? I was then the head of the mission. I was asked the questions. I never answered that question because I knew that this was a contentious issue debated between the parties of the election. And if I had intervened on one or the other side of that election, I would be a player. And the people of this country can be absolutely sure that ODIR is not going to be a player. We are here to try to improve the process. We have been here 17, 18 times before, and hopefully our reports have had an impact on, among other things, the legal framework.
The short-term observers will come next week probably, according to your schedule. It's about 250. The core mission is already here. For our viewers, it's good to know, is it about 200 and 70, 80 observers. Is it a kind of average number, or this is specifically for this country?
Well, it is. The number of short-term observers is not exact science, to put it that way. It is what we think we would need. We will have a slightly lower number than the 250 because we are dependent on secondments from the OSCE participating countries. The important thing is that we have enough for having the statistical material to assess the election on, and I'm absolutely sure that the number we finally will come up with, I can't give you any number now, will be sufficient for this. Of course, there are different numbers for different countries. My last mission was to the Russian Federation. We had, if I recall correctly, slightly more than 500 short-term observers. And if you consider the size of Russia, then you can see that there is no exact science here. 500 was sufficient to have to observe enough polling stations to get the statistical material. I'm sure that we will, a somewhat smaller number in this country, will be able to have a proper statistical background for our assessments.
One direct question for the referendum. According to you, does this question requires the OSCE standards, the question for?
Well, there are.
Is it clear?
There is Venice Commission code or good practices code, but there is no OSCE standards on the wording of the referendum question. And I understand that the Constitutional Court now has ruled that this is in accordance with your Constitution, which is of course a very important decision. We are is of course part of what we will report on, but it is the code of it is good practices of the Venice Commission, which is here what might be considered.
For the last elections, I remember that one of American diplomats called upon media to report any possible abuses or problems relating to free reporting on pressure. Do you have any relations at the moment with the media? Any contacts? Are you following?
We have. We are following the media. Definitely, we have part of our mission is to follow the media and to monitor the media, and we have a staff with us doing this. So we follow. I think what we could call the most important media.
And also NGO sector.
Well, we follow all aspects of the campaign. Not every detail, perhaps, but we try to follow the main issues and the main players.
Speaking about media, I think it was last week when some of the social media published news that OSCE, according to OSCE pool, roughly 250,000 voters will vote in this referendum. And I'm not quite sure was that fake news or that was real.
Well, it's no news that I know about anyway. I've never seen anything like that, and it was quickly forgotten.
You're not pollster organization?
No, we don't do polls. We just do observations, and we never say anything of, by the way, of assessments or things like that before the referendum day.
Probably you have also contacts with political parties. Do they have any complaints so far about the process?
Well, I think they should speak for themselves. So you have to ask them themselves. We have contact, of course, with the political parties, since they are the important players in this referendum campaign. I would like to say that for us it is important to be as open and transparent as we can, which means that we talk with as many people as we can. And that includes political parties, some in parliament, some not in parliament. But still we talk with everyone within the capacity we have.
Yeah,
but
you've been also invited to the president of the country, the prime minister, minister of foreign affairs, what they want.
Well, we establish contact, we listen to their assessments, and it gives us an understanding of the situation. But we also discuss with members of the opposition and with parties not in parliament. And that the whole purpose is to understand as much as possible about the dynamics of this election, because then it is that is a basis for being able to assess the conduct of the campaign and the technicalities of the campaign when we understand properly the dynamics of the campaign.
Also, there is an issue about the Prime Minister's speech in the Kriva Palanka when he called upon the businessmen to give some extra salary to the workers. Did you notice that?
Yes, we follow the news, of course. So we notice quite a lot of what is said from the political side, as we note what's said from other actors as well. But again, this is something that we do not comment on this side of the referendum day.
I must ask you, there is many referendums in Catalonia, Crimea, Brexit, and in Macedonia now that we will vote in 2 weeks. Can we put a common line on all those referendums? Where is actually the democracy is lying between people, demos, and the politicians?
Well, I think I should be very careful commenting on that, especially since you mentioned very concrete examples. Actually, my experience is from my own country. We had 2 failed referenda on a possible membership in the European Union. Yeah. So I've been through this a couple of times, and I think I must say that referenda are of course different from country to country depending on the circumstances. And an important circumstance here is that this is an consultative and advisory referendum on the question put by the parliament within an issue which is the competence of the parliament. And I think we should consider this referendum based on the specifics. You have a referendum law, which of course is a basis, and there are some general principles which we know well from elections. So I think we have a proper background for giving an assessment. But never forget the specifics. I think that's an important lesson.
And if we take like a comparison between Norway referendum, British referendum, there are many, Quebec also, and Macedonian one, there is also everywhere is pro and contra camps.
Yeah.
And the issue of financing is different.
Yeah.
My opinion is that there is no clear contra campaigning in Macedonia through this referendum. What do you think about that?
Well, that is up to the people to organize, of course. But it shows a fundamental difference between an election and a referendum. Because an election is a zero-sum game where you distribute 100% of the parliamentary or the municipal council seats to well-known players, those players who have put forward a list for the elections. So that is actually a very clear picture. When it comes to an advisory referendum like this, it is the parliament asking people a question, the population a question, and the way the people respond to it is up to the people itself. In some countries, you will have clear organizations, clear campaigns, like we had back in the 90s on the European issue. But of course, when the parliament asks a question, they can't organize a negative answer. So it is up to the people to organize it.
And let's finish with this question. What will be for you positive or successful referendum?
We are assessing this against democratic standards. That's our only concern. Whoever wins or loses this referendum is not part of what we are going to assess.
You're not doing with census, but the whole process and standards.
The whole process is, if it is according to the standards and the national laws, that is what we are assessing against. And how we see it, we will come back to after the day after the elections.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Pedersen.